All right. The shorthanded Heat lost to the Warriors team, their fourth loss in their past 7 games. Both the Bucks and Sixers are now just a game and a half back at the top spot in the East. Here's Erik Spoelstra.
I was wondering where the dinner plans were tonight after the game. It was pretty clear. Like, we have a very competitive, gnarly group, and we're getting our asses kicked. And it's two straight games. We were not playing to the level that we wanted to play. And I would say virtually every single person in that huddle was pretty animated about, our disappointment in how we were playing.
All right, Wendy back here with us. Wendy, you saw that Heat scuffle. Big deal?
Well, Stephen A. and I used to have this same discussion. We're going to go to Prime 112 after the game down in Miami, Stephen A., or Prime Italian. I was always a Prime Italian guy. Stephen A. always wanted to go across the street. I could write a novella about what went down in this huddle last night. It was amazing, okay? So we got 4 losses in 7 games. They just lost to the 76ers without Harden and Embiid. So they're already in a bad mood. Now they're giving up a huge run in the third quarter of this game. They've already heard that Kyrie is going to get cleared to play. So it's not going good. They're going to lose to the Warriors without Clay, Draymond, and Steph. Jimmy Butler has a weak closeout on defense, gives up a 3-pointer. Spo calls timeout, sits down in the huddle, looks at Jimmy Butler. Jimmy says something to him, and Spo says, "What, you want to fight me?" That triggers Udonis Haslem, who's always going to have Erik Spoelstra's back, and he threatens to kick Jimmy Butler's behind. Now listen, over the last 19 years, Udonis Haslem has threatened hundreds of people to kick their behind. There are clubs in Miami that the way you get on the list is by Udonis Haslem having offered to kick your butt. So you got Haslem and Jimmy Butler trying to now be separated. Then Kyle Lowry, who's seen a lot of stuff in his career and knows that this is just March and none of this really matters until April, May, June, he says, "I'm out of here." Spoelstra realizes this is actually a great moment that he could fire up his team because he hates the way how lazy that they're being on defense. So he extends it, smashes down a clipboard, and goes to confront Butler about it. But I know Spo, and I know in the back of his head he's really just trying to fire him up. And it works against Jimmy Butler because Jimmy Butler is at his best when he's in confrontation. He loves to create conflict if it isn't already there. So Spo's doing what he does, Butler's doing what he does. Then, in my favorite moment in the whole scuffle, Kyle Lowry calls a timeout in the middle of a timeout, gets in between Butler and Spo and says, "Timeout, timeout." But Kyle, you're already in timeout. Stephen A., it was just a classic moment for the Miami Heat, and guess what? Saturday, they get to welcome the Brooklyn Nets with Kyrie and Durant, the team they may end up playing in the first round of the playoffs, in a great moment to have a bounce-back performance. I think all of this ends up helping them in the medium term.
Well, I get where you're coming from, and I appreciate the breakdown. And here's the deal. I'm not sure the Heat would want Brooklyn in the first round personally. I know they defend, and I know they can beat anybody. But as Miami has shown you, they could also lose to anybody. So let's get that out the way. As an aside, I want to personally apologize to Karl Anthony Towns because Miami's lost 3 of the last 5. And one of the first losses was to the Minnesota Timberwolves. I got on Karl Anthony Towns a little bit, who is class personified and a good guy. I thought he was a little classless against Russell Westbrook the other day because Russell Westbrook's just going through what he's going through, even though he had a good game last night. Here's the deal. Karl Anthony Towns doing that to everybody right now. I'm watching Karl Anthony Towns, and it don't matter who he's going against. He's in Cat's face letting them know he's here. So, okay, I hear where you coming from. I see that it's working for you. To hell with what Stephen A. had to say. You were right, Karl Anthony Towns. Now let me get back to Miami. This is why the Miami Heat are first class. Wendy, I spoke to about 3 people last night within the Heat organization. Not a single one of them gave me the details. But they didn't avoid the issue either. You see how they handle it? This is, they should give lessons on how to handle a situation, Molly, Wendy. Wendy knows exactly what I'm talking about. Erik Spoelstra didn't duck the question. Erik Spoelstra didn't duck the issue. He just didn't give you the minute details of what transpiring because he's not going to betray any trust. But they didn't evade the issue. They didn't say no comment or anything like that. Kyle Lowry spoke on the issue. Erik Spoelstra spoke on the issue. I'm sure Jimmy Butler will speak on the issue. Udonis Haslem is Udonis Haslem. It's a reason why he's on the bench, and he's been in the league for 20 years. He's a consummate professional. He always put in his work. He never, ever cheated the game. And more importantly, from a player's perspective, he personifies and epitomizes what the Miami Heat culture is all about, what it's supposed to be about, what it will continue to be about long after Jimmy Butler or anybody else is gone. And I'm not saying that to throw any shade on Jimmy Butler, because as far as I'm concerned, it was a bit overblown, to be quite honest with you. We all know what a rough rider Jimmy Butler is. We also know he's an acquired taste. There might not have been any reason to act that way, but it's Spoelstra and it's Haslem, and it's worked for them all of these years. So why the hell should they deviate from that when their culture is one of the greatest cultures in the history of the sport? We all know that, and I just applauded them because nobody ran from the issue. They just didn't give us the minute details. The professionalism that they bring to the table is just something to admire and behold. Having said all of that, the bottom line is this. The Miami Heat are good enough to go to the finals and bad enough to get their asses bounced in the first round. You don't know what you're going to get from them. And so because of that, the fervor that Erik Spoelstra exhibited, Wendy, is also tinged with nervousness because he knows we could go to the finals or we could go home in the first round. He knows we could lose. Think about it. If the 7th and 8th seed truly ends up being Brooklyn or Toronto, Miami will face one of them. And both of those teams could beat Miami if they show up and Miami does not. Spoelstra knows that. And he knows that all of this effort to get the number 1 seed and what have you, all of it would be for naught because these brothers ain't ready. So he's justified in it. Yeah. And we haven't seen Erik Spoelstra get at anybody like that. But guess what? What you saw last night is who Erik Spoelstra is internally. He is that fiery. He is that passionate. He is that focused. He is that detailed-oriented. He is that much of a perfectionist. He does care that much. He never, ever, ever cheats the game of basketball and never sits idly by and watches one of his players do the same. This is why with all of those options that Pat Riley had, he gave the head coaching job years ago to a former video coordinator who has proven to be one of the great, great coaches in the game today. That is who Erik Spoelstra is. I had no problem with what I saw last night. I loved it. I absolutely loved it from everybody
and I will
involved.
say, the Heat are at the end of a stretch where they played 11 out of 12 games at home. And they got healthy. They're back to 100% after being banged up all year long. We were expecting them to use this stretch at home to solidify the number 1 spot and start their momentum ramp up into the postseason. And that has not happened. They lost to the Suns at home without Chris Paul. Then they lost to the Wolves. And by the way, as an aside for your Karl Anthony Towns, while you're praising him, he did give up a career-high 35 last night to DeAndre Ayton at home, and there was no talking at the end of that game by the Wolves. But having said that, then they lose, as I said, in Philly without Harden and Embiid, and then this one. And now they're facing a situation where they don't have the number 1 seed under great hold anymore. So part of this, I think, is Spo sniffing out that the team needs kind of to brawl internally to get them back where they needed to be on schedule. Because you are right, Stephen A. There has never been, in my 20 years covering the NBA, it has never been harder to win the Eastern Conference. To win 12 playoff games, and if you're the Brooklyn Nets, 13. To win 13 games or 12 games in the East this year is going to be harder than ever. And the Heat aren't going to be able to do it with the way they've been playing the last couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Molly,
Bucks and Sixers nipping at their heels, 2 games out. Yeah, go ahead.
Last word. Let's put it in perspective. If the Miami Heat right now, as presently constructed, started the playoffs, they would have to play Brooklyn in the first round, quite possibly Boston in the second round, and then Milwaukee in the conference finals.
Yeah. Yep. Tough for sure. No. Wendy will be back with us. Speaking of Boston, though, I want to get to some quick takes.